One. Welcome to Coach's Corner, everybody. I'm your host, Coach Tripp. We have a special guest today, one of my old football coaches at Alabama, Coach George Henshaw. Started, Coach, I don't want to say when you started, but it is right after you graduated from the University of West Virginia, where you played for Bobby Bowden and then went right on his staff after that. Talk about growing up in West Virginia.
Well, I grew up in Virginia and
Richmond.
West Virginia.
Right.
Coach Bowden recruited me out of high school to go to West Virginia. And so we went there and ended up playing at West Virginia. And then once I finished playing, then Coach Bowden became the head coach. Jim Carlin went to Texas Tech. And so I asked him about coming on and being a GA. And he said to go out there in the spring and work, and then at the end of spring practice, he'd let me know one way or the other.
What was he like? What was he like recruiting you, and what was it like playing for Coach Bowden? And then we'll talk about coaching with him in a little bit.
Jim Carlin was the head coach when I was playing, and then Coach Bowden came in right after that, and obviously he's like a second dad to me, and he's been a great inspiration, really. My whole life, and he set an example of how to treat people.
Absolutely, Coach. Played at West Virginia. Talk a little bit about your coaches and teammates on that squad. Were you guys good? Coach Bowden was the offensive coordinator.
Yes.
And then you became an assistant right away when he became the head coach in 1970. Is that right?
Yes, I was a graduate assistant in 70. In 71, I was a graduate assistant. 72, I was a freshman coach. That was the first year that freshmen were allowed to play varsity. Then at the end of the 72 season, 73, 4, 5, I was the defensive line coach at West Virginia. And then when he came to Florida State, I came down with him. In 1976, stayed to 82, and then 1983 went with Coach Perkins up where you are up at in Alabama, and stayed there for 4 years. Then went to Tulsa as the head coach, and then in the NFL for 21 years.
Oh my gosh, Coach! We're going to talk about your NFL coaching days in a minute and all the great quarterbacks, but what position did you play in college, and how did you go to the defensive line coach? Come on, Coach.
The defensive lineman myself.
There you go. It's the natural to coach the D line.
I started, but I was always interested in trying to learn about what they were trying to do on offense. So then what happened is when I came down to Florida State, Coach Bowden told me that I was not ready to be a coordinator, and he was absolutely correct. And he said, but if you do a good job, the next coordinator job becomes open, you'll be my coordinator. So he was thinking Jack Stanton was our defensive coordinator, and he was a guy that had jumped around to a lot of different schools, and he figured that Jack would stay a couple years and then leave. And then I would be the defensive coordinator. And then the guy on offense was George Hafner, who coached at Pitt and Iowa State. He was there with Johnny Majors. And then he came down to Florida State. He was a guy that stayed at one place a long time, didn't move anything. But what happened is after the 1978 season, he was upset because Florida State was 8-3. And did not get invited to a bowl game. There weren't many bowl games back then.
Right.
And if you didn't have a great following and could get people to come to the game, then they wouldn't have you come.
Right.
So he got upset, went to Texas Tech. And the day he went to Texas Tech, Coach Bowden called me in his office. He said, I never coached offense a day in my life. and he called me in his office. He said, you ready to be offensive coordinator? I said, yes, sir. Because here's what happens. Your job was to get the other coaches and make sure that they were coaching Coach Bowden's offense like he wanted it done. So that was my job. It was not to give a bunch of input or anything like that. It was to follow instructions and get people to be able to execute the offense that Coach Bowden had in his mind. So,
Well,
but
yeah, you have to make sure that offensive line coach, the wide receiver coach, the running back coach, the tight ends coach, and all those understand their roles and are teaching it properly to their positions, because the assistant coaches, a lot of people don't understand, coach, the assistant coaches do 90% of the individual drills and technical drills and teaching drills.
right, that's all correct. And see, what happened is when I went over to offense and became the offensive coordinator, Coach Bowden was highly criticized. This was after the 1978 season for hiring a guy that had never coached offense. All right. So anyway, we go to 79 and we go 11-0. That, then nobody said a word.
Was Wally Woodham one of your quarterbacks?
Oh yeah, Wally Woodham and Jimmy Jordan.
Wow.
Yeah.
I know Wally Woodham.
Yeah, Wally.
Great guy.
Wally, I see him in the gym sometimes now, and I still kid him because, as you know, Wally's not real big, not fast, not strong, doesn't have a great arm, accurate arm, but very smart. And so, anyway, I tell guys in the gym, I said, listen, you see this guy right here? You only want him to be your quarterback if you want to win games. Other than that,
Coach Brian felt that way about Pat Trammell. Pat couldn't run real well. He couldn't throw the ball with a great throw or spiral. All he did is win games.
yeah.
Well, his favorites, if coaches say they don't have a favorite, I think they're lying to everybody, Coach, if they don't have favorite players. Well, Mike Shula was one of my favorite teammates. Him and Walter Lewis were two of the quarterbacks that you coached at Alabama. Two great people.
Yeah.
Better people than they are quarterbacks.
So much respect for both of them. And I recruited Mike out of Miami. And that's a great thrill to be down there with Coach Shula and his wife, Dorothy, at the time. And what a wonderful, wonderful family. And of course, I just happen to have just the absolute utmost respect for Walter Lewis because at that particular time, that was not real easy to be a quarterback. But he was so smart, and I think he graduated in engineering or something. But I remember couldn't come to practice a couple days. And anyway, we have a scrimmage on Saturday. All right. And so Walter Lewis is the quarterback. Ray Perkins says, I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and scrimmage. And so we can catch Walter Lewis up. He said, I'm going to make him play all the time, play both teams, be the quarterback. So he went out there. He played like and this is in spring practice now. It's hot out there. You know that.
I remember that. I remember.
Okay. He goes out there and has 144 plays at quarterback, and obviously never complained a bit. Of course, he was in just unbelievable great shape and just a tremendous human being.
He was the toughest son of a gun on offense. I think Rocky Colburn was the toughest son of a gun I've ever seen on defense. Kid from Tate, right here in Pensacola, Florida, Rocky Colburn.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
Then you had Mike Shula. See, that's another one where Mike, as you know, was a very, very smart guy and could get the ball to people, an accurate quarterback, just like Wally. Wally was an accurate quarterback, and so was Mike Shula. He knew exactly where to go with the ball, and he was a real challenge as a coach, because what happened is you had to be on top of your game plan and everything, because he had watched the film and he knew the opponent now.
Well, he's been watching it since he was a little kid.
Absolutely. Okay.
You know what? They were my favorite team, Coach, when I was a kid in upstate New York, Miami Dolphins. I idolized them in Shula. So when I found out Mike was signing with us, I was overjoyed and became good friends with him, golfing buddies with him in Tampa. And I used to kick his butt in golf all the time, even though he called my golf swing a hockey swing. So, yeah, it was a joy, man, to play with him too. We had some great games. So I know, what was the hottest game you've ever been involved with, Coach? I mean, it was just so, I can remember the hottest and coldest game I ever been involved in. What was the hottest one?
As a player, the hottest game that I was ever involved in when we were at West Virginia. See, we played all afternoon games because there were no light, and that's how everyone was. There no lights back then,
Nope.
or let's say it this way: very few people up there had lights. So you played games Saturday afternoon.
Right.
Well, one of the kind of a game that we just played every once in a while, we played at Tulane, and we played night at Tulane, and it rained during the day at Tulane in New Orleans. All right. And then we played that night in the old Tulane Stadium. I mean, it was so hot. I mean, that is the tiredest I have ever been in my entire life. In that game, I really thought I was going to die and was almost hoping I would.
I was kind of hoping that way in the hottest game I ever played. 1982 versus Ole Miss in Jackson, Mississippi, early September.
Wow.
It was so hot, and Coach Bryant put me in the first quarter, the first team. You know how you put it all second string in at once?
Yeah.
And so I was second string right corner behind Stan Gay, and they put me in, and I'm standing midfield right in front of Coach Bryant. And what do they do on the first play? They throw a slant to my wide receiver. So I read the 3-step drop, break down him, got there a split second before the ball did, broke it up. Out come the flag. Coach Bryant, oh, damn it, everybody out.
Yeah.
He took everybody out after one play.
Wow.
I felt like digging a hole. It was so hot, and I just wanted to get cold and hide somewhere. But how about the coldest game you ever involved in? Maybe it was the 80s.
Oh, the coldest game without any doubt was when I was with the Titans, and we played up at New England in a playoff game. And it was about the middle of January, and it was -10. And now that is beyond.
Ooh.
And yet on the other hand, nobody seemed to worry about it much, and that was just the way it was, and the stadium was packed.
Well, pros are a little bit different than college in that respect, because I remember in 1983 against Doug Flutie, Boston College in Foxborough, by the way, when it was so cold, the power went out, and I think it rained, hail, sleet, and snowed. And
that's right.
That was a brutally, because it was wet. It was that wet cold, and the wind was blowing 40 miles an hour. Remember that, Coach?
Yes, I sure
did. Man, it was so. And my teammates on defense were saying, "Let's huddle up and get warm." And I'm from upstate New York. I started just laying them have it. I said, "You worry about the guy in front of you, not worry about getting warm." But let's face it, most of those guys never been in those conditions before.
Sure. Yeah.
Because it was that wet cold.
Yes, no doubt.
Well, you saw some in Denver. You spent a lot of years coaching in Denver. You actually had John Elway your last year. Talk a little bit about your years in Denver.
The whole time I was in Denver, John was our quarterback, and he was, he's a phenom, really, and just maybe a photographic memory. The way that we put our game plan and things together, it was just off the charts how good he was at getting those things done, getting the people around him to play better. And of course, that's one of the qualities, I would say maybe the main quality of a fantastic quarterback is, can you get the players around you to play better? And obviously, in order to do that, you have to set an example. But I've seen guys that were fantastic talents, but they couldn't get the guys around them to play. And as a result, it's a team sport. And you've seen the last few years where there have been several quarterbacks that you could see they made the people around them better players.
Coach, you're always one step ahead of me. You were when you coached me at Bama, and you are now, because my next question was baseball scouts have like this 5-tool star, 5 tools. What is it? Like speed, power, arm, batting, defense, and
Yeah.
batting average. And I think you just named the number one thing about a 5-tool quarterback is getting other players around you better. How do they do that though? Is that like an intangible, like Steve McNair? Maybe he was also your player that you
Yeah.
coached, and I know you have high regard for him. Was he one of those players?
Yes, I was very fortunate because when I was here at Florida State, uh, we had Wally Woodham and Jimmy Jordan. All right, then you go to Alabama and you have a Mike Shula. All right, then you end up in the NFL and you have a John Elway. Then you go to the Giants and you have Phil Simms. Then you go to Tennessee and you have Steve McNair.
Oh
Then,
my,
then you go to New Orleans and you have Drew Brees.
yeah.
Somebody sits there and says, "Well, how do you make it 21 years in the NFL?" I said, "You make it with those quarterbacks, and when you don't have those quarterbacks, then you get fired." And, and really, Paul, if you sit there and look throughout the country, take in college now, all right, almost every coach that gets fired because the quarterback does not produce for whatever reason. If he
Right.
doesn't produce, the head coach gets fired.
Coach, you're a step ahead of me again, man. I don't know how you got my list of questions, but you're just psychic today. 1/3 of NFL teams seem to be looking for a franchise quarterback every year. Talk
Yeah.
about how hard the position is, because only 10 to 15 guys on the planet Earth can play that position at a high level.
Yeah, that's very true. It's a very difficult place to play because not only do you have to perform, but your job is to be able to get what we just talked about. The people around you have to be able to play and play better than what they would normally play without you. And you set a great example to them from a mental and physical point of view, and that's huge. The other things is I think myself now. I know this thing has changed around some, but uh, people are more inclined to these running quarterbacks. I'm not real big on these running quarterbacks because most of them are just good enough to get you beat. They make enough good plays to give you hope, and they don't make plays to end up costing you the game. But and they get hurt.
And they get hurt. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah, you're right, Coach. Mental and physical point, you get hurt a lot.
yeah, what I want, I'm always looking for a guy that's not particularly a strong arm, but a guy that is smart, that can process things, get the ball out of his hands fast, and be an accurate quarterback. And those guys are very, very few of them around.
There's very few of them, is right. Like I said, half, the third of the teams are always looking for that franchise quarterback. And one of them obviously was John Elway. Coach Miller comes on my show and he tells me the story about Elway, how he would lift with the offensive linemen. So he was physically available, but he was so smart that you talked about, that he was mentally sharp. It takes a whole leader. It takes all these characteristics of a leader, and where you want them is that quarterback.
Yeah, well, just like what you're saying, John would lift with the offensive line. But what do you think was going to happen out there on Sunday? I mean, those guys, weren't great players for the most part, but yet they were going to do everything they possibly could
Yep.
to protect John and to help John. Well, here's a guy that has an understanding of that. I mean, we have heard different stories. Tom Brady would take guys in the offseason, take them to different places and be in touch with the receivers. And hey, the bottom line is, hey, if you want the ball during the season, you better come to these workouts in the off season with me. Now I'm no coach, but
Right.
but me,
Right.
and just to be able to. Well, that's part of getting these guys better all the time, and those guys have made other players a lot of money.
Yeah, it's the self-motivation guys that you want to get. I remember reading Bill Walsh's book, and he talked about driving by a high school one day and seeing Joe Montana and Jerry Rice after they were all pro working together at a high school field on drills that would bore a high school kid to death, it said.
Yeah.
Those are the type of players you want to find. Also, coaches. I think coaches make a difference. A friend of mine is best buddies with quarterback coach David Lee. Coach Lee was real impressed with a local high school kid from Catholic recently. But have you coached against Coach David Lee a few times?
Yeah, he was at Arkansas, I believe, one time. Of course, he's been a lot of places.
Yeah. About eight colleges and eight NFL teams.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah.
Well, more passing, more important to have, I think, a quality quarterback coach. And I also think being a DB myself and coaching DBs for 20 years, I think that having a great defensive secondary coach is more important than it used to be as well.
Well, I think that you are absolutely correct, because people are throwing the ball more now than ever before.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a fair number of colleges and pros now that have two people coach the secondary. They have one guy coaches the corners, and then somebody coaches the safeties. You know, just like at Alabama,
right?
Nick Saban coaches the corners, and somebody else coaches the safeties.
You know what? I was thinking about being a head coach, and I thought I would have to lose my position coach but Saban went to the highest level and still coaches the DBs.
Oh, yeah.
I remember Jeremy Pruitt coming to town telling me when he was a DB coach, he said he hasn't run a meeting in a year and a half. Does he still run meetings for DBs?
I'm not sure about that, but he is right there. If he's not running it, he's sitting right there checking everything out, and he's definitely on the field. Well, he enjoys it. That's the part of that he and enjoys, because there's a lot of the things that all head coaches have to do that are not real enjoyable. That's just part of the job. You have to do it. But he loves coaching, game planning, all of that. And don't think for a second he's not right in the middle of all of it. And then also for you to do as good as he's done, I mean, he absolutely loves recruiting. So that's a good combination if you like to coach and you like to recruit.
Coach, what are you doing now to keep busy nowadays? I know you've retired. You coached for 30, 40 years.
Yeah, I'm doing some real estate things right now down in Destin and here in Tallahassee, and building a couple houses up in Charlotte with my daughter. So I'm certainly keeping busy and trying to keep up with the honeydew list that the director of internal affairs at my house gives me.
Coach, it's great to see you.
You know what, Paul?
What?
I have no idea since I've retired how I coached. I don't know how I actually had a job and was able to get things done. When I see, I'm busy all day, every day now.
No, they're just catching up. They're just catching up to us. All those days we missed that we were at the ball field that they're letting us do now.
And let me tell you
we lost them.
One thing I lost. Okay.
What's that? We're back.
The thing that I got is going seeing those grandkids.
Yeah.
All right. We about finished because I need to grab this thing.
Yes, grandkids are a joy. Love you, Coach. It's great to see you. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Coach George Henshaw, one of a kind. All right, we're going to go to commercial break. Thanks for watching the show. Don't miss these great messages from our sponsors, because without them, this would not be possible. Have a great sports weekend, everybody.
It's Ram Truck Month at Hill Kelly with 0% financing for 72 months on 2022 Ram 1500 Bighorn Quad Cab models. At 1.9% financing for 72 months on 2022 Ram 1500 Bighorn Crew and Laramie models. During the Jeep Celebration event at Hill Kelly, save up to $6,686 on a 23 Grand Cherokee L Limited 4x2. Or get 0% financing for 36 months and save up to $3,000 on a 2022 Jeep Compass. Save up to $6,100 on a 2022 Jeep Gladiator Sports. Or save up to $4,000 on a 2022 Wrangler Unlimited Sahara 4xe. Text, chat, or shop 7 days a week at HillKellyDodge.com. See why we're the #1 Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram dealer on the Gulf Coast. Nobody beats a Hill Kelly deal. Nobody.
Offers on select models, rebates, and financing requirements apply. See dealer for details.
My name is Steve Reynolds. I'm the manager and owner of Cordova Lanes, and we help keep your mind out of the gutter. Cordova Lanes is part of the community of Pensacola. Being here for 43 years, we've entertained more people than any other bowling center in the city. We sell fun for a living. Cordova Lanes is located at 2111 Airport Boulevard in Pensacola, behind Cordova Mall. Come on out and see us at Cordova Lanes Bowling Center. Thank you.
Arbitrium Consulting for all your fencing, landscaping, pressure washing, tree trimming needs. Call 850-483-0350 for your free estimates. Serving Pensacola, Gulf Breeze, Navarre, Fort Walton, Destin, Perdido, Gulf Shores, Foley, and the entire Gulf Coast. Arbitrium Consulting is owner-operated, fully licensed and insured. Call today, 850-483-0350, the official landscaper of Coach's Corner. Are you riding around in a filthy vehicle? Dirty car no more. Visit Ronnie's Car Wash today to get it shining in no time. They have 3 convenient locations with another coming soon. The unlimited monthly wash packages start as low as $14.95 per month with free vacuums, multi-purpose spray, and towels. Visit them in Gulf Breeze, Navarre, Fort Walton, and soon Crestview. Don't wait, wash today. Be sure to see Ronnie's Car Wash on Facebook to see the latest specials and discounts. You'll be riding and shining in no time.
Given the choice, we'd choose new over old anytime. Snap our fingers and undo years of wear and tear that every home endures. Thankfully, First Choice Home Improvement turns ugly into unugly almost overnight. First-rate materials, low prices. The transformation is unbelievable. First Choice Home Improvements, your unofficial headquarters for turning ugly into unugly. Call them today, 476-8887. Online at firstchoicehomeimprovements.com.
Your first choice is the best choice, so make your choice First Choice.
Over 30 years, you have seen the orange Beck signs all over the Gulf Coast listing a property for sale or lease. Beck Partners is your trusted advisor in commercial real estate, property management, commercial and personal insurance. Senior Vice President David Valletto has been with Beck Partners since 1989. Take advantage of his wealth of knowledge by calling him today at 982-7352. 982-7352. Extensive experience in all aspects of leasing, sales, management, and site selection will make sure your expectations are exceeded.